Welcome to the Divisional Round podcast, joined by some guy that follows Green Bay who's a little bit happy, but we won't talk about him. And Brasher, big fan of the 49ers, big fan of football, pretty amped up after that outstanding Divisional Round. I'm very happy to do the review.
More than happy to, more excited about I got my only desirable playoff matchup coming. I thought for a minute there it wasn't going to happen, but...
Chad Henne delivered for you.
Chad Henne did the job. Chad Henne did the job for me.
Let's be honest, it's not just your ideal matchup. It was your wet dream of a playoff matchup. So
it's the only of all 14 teams in the playoffs. It was the only. Forget divisions, forget conferences. It's the only matchup I want to see.
If you could have engineered it to be the Super Bowl, you would have.
I would have, yes.
All right, but that's next episode. Yeah, long year, weird year. 8 best teams, probably not the 8 best teams, but anyway, the teams that made the divisional round played off.
Yeah, but about 20 teams could be part of the 8 best teams of the year.
Well, the fact the Packers made it really says it all. I'm not sure, but Brash, how many T-tails did you get through?
None. I watched every game. I watched every snap. I watched.
I
didn't watch anything live on Sunday, which was a bit of a challenge because I had to turn off. Yeah, I had a fairly important golf day on Sunday, so I had to turn off. You know, like I said, master of the first world problem. Had to turn off my data feed on my phone because I didn't want any Google flashing scores, and then turn the radio off and had to listen to a very boring 104.3 Gold FM on the way home. Which was, it's always good to, on a Sunday afternoon, to listen to Steve Winwood and a few other
really
exciting
a different radio station than 104.3 in Canberra, but we won't go there.
Yeah, I know. This is
not quite that religious.
This is classic goldies, right? This is, for them, Cat Stevens is a relatively new up-and-coming artist, yeah. And then I watched all the games live on Monday, so I had a very important customer meeting, obviously, which is always a challenge in COVID times, to say that you're out on a customer site, but I managed to weasel through that, and now looking forward to actually having an unencumbered, without lie or falsitudes Monday, because I'm taking the day off for the championship round.
All right, one last question for you about your Sunday. How long did it take you to bolt the 72-inch fold-down TV screen that you've got with your golf cart back up into the roof so that you wouldn't get distracted with the live stream? Was that like a 20-minute job, or?
No, I just unplugged it.
Take out the HDMI cable and pretend it was a putting training course. Yeah.
That's right, and the direct satellite link. Yes, little foxhole dish on the roof.
It's all right, gentlemen. I'm just measuring my distance to my next putt. I'm not listening to anything else. No cheating going on here.
No.
All right. Speaking of unexpected wins, yeah, well, there weren't really any. But what was unexpected was some of the events during the various games. We might start with, no, not you, Fooey, Brash. Probably the game that disappointed me the most in the week, Ravens-Bills. Only because I didn't think the Ravens ever really got in a groove. It was lowest scoring game, obviously, of the week. And I guess anytime you hold the Ravens to 3 points, even in a snow game or a cold weather game, they're going to struggle to win, aren't they?
I think there is, I don't know, and look, I'm sure somebody will correct me on this but what about? But here's a question I'll ponder, my fellow turkeys. Using the term loosely true dual threat, as opposed to mobile quarterbacks, are they clutch? Who's the last clutch one? I don't consider, and before anyone says Russell Wilson, I consider him a mobile quarterback, not a dual threat quarterback. And someone may argue with me on that, but he's been in the league in a long time and he hasn't really ever won a rushing title or come close to it from a quarterback perspective, has he? He may have. I don't know.
No, not really, no.
No. So, my question I ponder with Jackson is he a dual threat quarterback's clutch?
I will ponder the question, is Lamar Jackson a dual threat quarterback?
As in you're going the other way, thinking outside the box that he's running back playing quarterback.
Big call, Fooey, as always, right out there with your predictions. Don't let that fence scratch your balls too much, all right?
Let's just assume that he is, because he can throw the ball around a little bit. I can't think of a quarterback that is a dual threat and is a clutch quarterback, no. So to answer your question, I would say I can't think of one.
I just watched that game, and you could visibly tell on the screen that Buffalo were not going to let Lamar Jackson beat them with his legs. Not so much through the whole game, but down the stretch.
Well, not to be rude there, Brash, but I think it's all kind of a one-dimensional question that ignores the fact that the greatest dual threat on the Ravens team at quarterback was in fact Tyler Huntley. Completed 6 to 13 pass attempts, ran for 32 yards off only 3 attempts, which is only 2 yards less than what Lamar ran for. So, arguably on those numbers, and I am being half serious here, on those numbers and the way that game played out, great, the practice squad elite, Tyler Huntley, is just as much of a dual threat as Lamar. Now, my question to you, Brash, was the failing of the dual threat and the fact that he was nowhere near as effective as he was in the playoffs last year, was that down to a regression by Jackson, or is that more defenses adjusting to it, what you could argue is a pretty one-dimensional rushing plan?
I think if you're going to be a quarterback coming in off the bench and be effective, a dual threat quarterback has the most chance of succeeding early, because there's no tape, they don't know tendencies, they don't know when he's likely to tuck it under his arm, they don't know how far he'll go through his progressions before he tucks and runs. So that's why, what was remarkable with me with Huntley was how much I thought it was just Lamar Jackson came out in a different jersey.
They've obviously
they're almost physical statures almost identical.
Absolutely. My question wasn't a complete joke. I mean, for me, it's as if the Harbaugh offensive scheming has said, go find me players that are exactly this height, exactly this weight, that do just this,
Look, I'm waiting for the boil over. It's from another game, but if we're talking about substitute quarterbacks, I'm waiting for the boil over when it actually gets revealed that Chad Henne was really Patrick Mahomes that came back after failing the concussion protocol.
The jersey fits perfectly, but
That's
it's not
right.
the same guy. It's not the same guy.
How are you going to know?
But, gentlemen, the other thing that stands out...
They just removed the stick from his ass so he walked normal.
Gentlemen, the other thing that stands out for this game for me is 4 missed field goals. There were as many missed field goals in this game as nearly as sacks.
How wide were the uprights?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the coldness of the weather. Maybe it was all those Bills fans scaring the shit out of a Baltimore team that had never played in front of a crowd this year. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, because Baltimore was such a warm city location too, yeah? I couldn't believe when Tucker missed those field goals. I was just stunned. That ultimately was the end, the result in the end, wasn't it?
Oh, it just killed the momentum. I think the Bills won by more than 6 points. So but it was particularly
how
because
and when he missed them.
Exactly. Yeah, the momentum killers. I mean, you can turn around and say, oh, but Tyler Bass missed 2 field goals too. But the difference is they weren't momentum killers,
I think it really just went to show how important a good kicker is, or in this case, you need a great one, because Tucker is a very good one.
Yeah.
And you could argue he's a great one as well. But the conditions, I think, really played a major part in all those misses. Like Bass has been a good kicker for a rookie also. I think it was just really difficult shit conditions for a kicker to try and kick in.
Yet it's had virtually no coverage. All the coverage has been about how Lamar was hampered and what a courageous effort Tyler Huntley trotted out. I don't know. I mean, for me, I thought, and I get why they did it. It was a business decision, but not playing Mark Ingram, not having him on your squad for a playoff game, that just says I'm not real serious, I don't know. It was an underwhelming performance by the Ravens, and probably most of all, I thought, for me, by their defense. Their defense just, they got some serious talent on that defense. Most of them were still in the hotel bedroom at quarter time,
I was probably a bit more. I haven't really looked at the stats for the game, but I've just had a quick look now. What really jumped out at me was the time of possession. Baltimore had the ball for 35 minutes. Buffalo 24. Usually that kind of discrepancy would show a massive Baltimore win, but I think when you said earlier that they really the Buffalo defense, I don't think they were great, but they, as I said, they really wanted to make sure that Jackson did not beat them with his legs, and yeah, I think it showed.
Is this game all really turn Brash on Teron Johnson?
I think rarely does a red zone interception that then goes the other way. That's a 14-point turnaround. Yeah, you would say that as a significant play. But just on Fui's point, did Buffalo even call a run during the game? That was just like they put that squarely on Allen's shoulders to win that game. I've seen Greg Roman in action before, obviously from his previous tenure closely, and he does have a bit of a reputation that his offenses get a bit stale over time. Last year he was seen as this revolutionary offensive coordinator, designing plays that were just virtually impossible to defend with Lamar Jackson. But I seem to remember similar commentary under Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco as well, and he eventually got, the fan base were calling for Roman's head the following season after Kaepernick got the 49ers all the way to a Super Bowl. So I'm just wondering whether Lamar Jackson has the next gear, whether defenses have worked out tendencies of the team. His wide receivers certainly didn't help Jackson at all. I don't think have
some huge drops.
Did the Ravens drop more catches in one game than probably half a season's worth? So, the thing that was interesting was that, firstly, I was surprised how much Buffalo passed. They didn't even attempt to run. They just thought, well, we're not going to do anything here, so why even try? And how much Buffalo actually blitzed as well. I think at least it felt like at least half the time they were blitzing, sending more than the four defensive linemen over up against Jackson to sort of get him unsettled as well.
I think that really worked in their favour as well, because they were getting into the backfield a lot and getting your second and longs, third and even longers. Yep. They really forced Baltimore to try and pass the ball to win it. So I think they did that really well.
I think they also nutted out pretty clearly that Jackson has been hampered a little bit since he's had the COVID. I know you love that comment, Brad. But they also, Mark Andrews is a threat, but just about all their other receivers, including Hollywood Brown, for all of Hollywood Brown's self-importance, are not, there's nobody out there that's the threats that the Steelers wide receivers are, or, some of the other elite wide receiver cores in the league. And they obviously identified that they could put him under some pressure with those rushes, and they didn't need to have double coverage on any of the wide receivers, and a linebacker could cover Andrews, and that was it. And that's exactly how it played out. On that interception by Teron Johnson, he wasn't covering anybody. He was looking at the quarterback's eyes, and you only do that when you know that single coverage is good enough on all the receivers. But the other thing that stood out for me was you take out Josh Allen with his 7 scrambles, which were all responding to, none of those were design runs. They were all scrambles in response to pressure. Picking up on Brash's point, the Bills didn't even run the ball 10 times. Singletary had 7 carries, and that's it. Yeldon had 2, and he didn't even get 5 yards. So, and I know, I know Zach Moss is out for them, and that's got to affect their balance. But, it's a big question for next week.
Yeah, look,
question. One-dimensional,
I genuinely would say, if you were in the coach's room before this game, if you said, do you think you could win with 17 points on the board, I think resoundingly they would have said no. I think Buffalo actively made a decision, which surprised me. There's only 20 points scored in this game, right? That Buffalo genuinely made a decision before this game in both their offensive design, scheming and play calling, and the way they went about it by getting Allen to throw it. They were not going to get into a war of attrition on the ground with Baltimore. They were going to live and die by the pass. You're absolutely right around the lack of respect for the Baltimore wide receivers, because Buffalo played base personnel and rushed one, and basically played base personnel most of the game, and just bought a rusher a blitzer at least half time.
I can't recall more than maybe 2 instances where they had double coverage in the whole game.
No,
and they were never. This wasn't Steelers Browns, where the Browns got so far in front they could afford to go prevent.
Sure.
This was a close game, on the scoreboard at least. But I never felt the Ravens were a threat even before Jackson went out of the game. They didn't seem to have the capacity to threaten the big play. I don't know. Maybe I overrated the interception. The other thing I will say is I thought the other part of the Greg Roman game plan that he's always been kind of focused on, which is protect the ball. No interceptions and 1 fumble was all they gave up, and that's probably enough. You score 17 points and you don't turn the ball over, you're going to be competitive. Any last thoughts, Brash? Offensive line hurt for the Ravens. I mean, was that really a factor?
Not really. No, I think it was a little bit of lack of explosive play calling, scheme design, drop balls, more than anything else as well. And maybe if you make Jackson one-dimensional, that might be the recipe to beat the former MVP.
Fui J.K. Dobbins caught more yards than he ran for. Mm-hmm. Should they have turned him into their full-time wide receiver threat to help out Hollywood Brown?
No. Look, I guess it's okay for him to split out wide every now and again, but I think somewhere behind the quarterback is probably his best position.
I really shouldn't do this, but he's not here on the podcast to defend himself, so we'll wrap up coverage of this game with a shout-out to Blackie's boy, Patrick McLean, linebacker for the Ravens. I believe Blackie picked him as the breakout rookie behind one other dude who plays for Arizona. Fui, how would you gently break it to him? Did Patrick Queen perform like a king?
No, not in this game. He's had an okay year, but I don't think it was Baltimore's best game as a unit, and probably there's not many individuals that could say they were on song. So.
More disappointing game than the Ravens-Bills, Blackie, in terms of the Ravens' performance? They're the real underperformers of the divisional round, yeah?
I think they've probably got quite a few question marks moving forward. They've got a few pieces on defense that they probably need to look at. They need to actually get some help in the passing game. I'm not sure that Hollywood Brown's the perfect fit for Lamar Jackson. J.K. Dobbins is looking like he's going to get a full workload now that Ingram's been released. Mark Andrews is obviously good, but he's not your standard inline blocking tight end. I think if I was them, and their centre is probably the first and foremost thing they need to address, because that was one of their strengths last year, was their offensive line. They lost Ronnie Stanley, a few other pieces, and suddenly their team looks much, much worse. Obviously, Stanley will come back. But yeah, they need offensive line help, and they probably need a big dog outside receiver.
I think Marquise Pouncey might be available. They should probably see if they can pounce on Pounce. Is it the Stephon Diggs show, you reckon, for the Bills?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's rare that you see a trade that's win-win. I think that certainly was a trade that was win-win. I think if the Vikings and the Bills had their time again, they'd do that trade 10 times out of 10. As I said before, Zach Moss and Singletary just don't do it for me. Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, these guys aren't superstars, but one thing you can rely on is Diggs being open. And part of the reason I suspect that teams might be struggling to run the ball a little bit more is pretty much every quarterback that's left, you have to respect their legs, and maybe they're putting a few more guys in the box to try and reduce that effectiveness and saying, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us with your arm.
Brash, what was your opening question, mate?
Can't remember. What did I say?
Dual threat?
No. And I did say at the time. So Blackie, what I'm arguing is that the question I posed at the start was, are dual threat quarterbacks clutch? And I can't think of too many that are. And I made the distinction that I do not count a mobile quarterback, and none of those remaining quarterbacks I would consider dual threat quarterbacks. I would consider them mobile quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think there's a distinction between the running back that can throw and the scrambling quarterback who, rolls out or runs when the pocket's broken down. I think that's what these guys are. They're almost more effective effective when they're outside the pocket, certainly in the AFC.
I guess probably the other question for that Bills-Ravens game was the 2 missed field goals by each team. Momentum killers for the Ravens, really sucked the life out of the game, yeah?
It's been interesting because everyone's considered Justin Tucker to be the GOAT for a very long time because his field goal percentage is so good. But I think what people fail to remember is plenty of guys have really good field goal percentages until they don't. And then they have a few bad lean years and then they're out of the league. And then, their stats don't look that crash hot. I wouldn't surprise me if we saw that from Tucker. Obviously, conditions weren't that good. It's playoff games, so there's extra pressure. But it was just, something interesting. That's probably the most reliable position that the Ravens have had over the last probably 5 years.
I'm so glad I let you finish that because when you first said kickers have great stats until they don't, God, that was a phooey comment. That's just such a phooey comment. But you made it sound logical, so that was good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there were a number of things that were a little unusual about the weekend. Certainly the fact that Tyler Huntley finished the game for the Ravens as effectively a not just filling in for one snap, but taking multiple snaps across the later part of the game. That very few people would have predicted that. Well, we then had the big, hyped, huge build-up match between the great veteran, the Hall of Famers, the stats patters extraordinaire, Mr. Brady versus Mr. Brees. Well, if you'd said Jameis Winston would have got some game time, yeah, I think people would have been surprised. But he did. Good old Jameis got some game time. This game probably demonstrates, more than anything else, the scripted, choreographed lifestyle that a certain quarterback that used to play for the Patriots lives, when most of the coverage of the whole game has been about him throwing a pass to the other quarterback's son in the end zone an hour and a half after the game finished. Is it really that boring a game that the post-game family farewell was the most exciting part of it, Fui?
Yeah, I don't think it really got to any great heights. I think that's probably because Drew Brees can't pass or throw over a jam team these days. So it wasn't. It always felt like it was going to be a Bucks win, even when the Saints were ahead for mine. The pass from Winston to who was it? What's his name? Forgot his name. The guy who came from Denver, etc. Sanders.
Emmanuel Sanders. Yes.
No, it was actually Smith. Sorry. The guy that never does anything fantasy wise, even though he should.
So Brash, on this game, Antonio Brown perhaps didn't perform out of his skin. Indeed, there wasn't a single wide receiver for the Buccaneers that caught more than 50 yards of passes. Are they a bit light on the wide receiver side, or was that more a reflection of how bad the Saints defense is, that they didn't really need to have a big passing game and they still put 30 points up?
No, I think there was nothing wrong. I think New Orleans defense put a lot of pressure on Brady. He was. I thought he was consistently being harassed. I don't think he got to do any of his traditional, 5 and 7 step drops with any sort of comfort. I think he was probably doing more the dink and dunk than what was happening on the other side of the ball. I think, and he didn't have to do a lot. I'm surprised there weren't more explosive or big chunk plays from the Tampa Bay passing game, because I think that's what you would have expected would have been one of the ingredients to a win for them. But when the opposing quarterback's turning the ball over the way he was, and without really being pressured, if you have a look at the pure pressure stats for Brees and Brady in that game, Brady was under a lot more pressure than Brees, I would have thought, over the duration of the game. I think the Saints' defense strength is their defensive line, and they played well there. I don't think, you would have thought that the Tampa Bay defensive backfield was all-star, but I think they were just tremendously opportunistic on some pretty average reads and throws from Brees. I think what they finished the game, fumble, punt, intercept in a 10-point game. And Tampa Bay extracted full value for money out of their turnovers. Three interceptions cost 21 points in a 30-20 game.
So, Fui, it's really not about Brady, it's about the Buck D, yeah?
Yeah, I would say, especially on that game, look, they've actually run the ball 30 times. I think that has had a lot to do with it as well, and they were successful rushing the ball. So that's, I think that's pretty important for them, and to not, I mean, you can't. Yeah, we know Brady still has it, but you can't expect him to be on song every week and be able to.
Hey, ease up. He ran for a touchdown, fuck's sake.
Oh, 1 yard.
2 yards, anyway. But you just said they had a successful running game. They ran the ball 30 times and they didn't get a 65-yard running back.
Well, that's all right. But as long as they're averaging 4 to 5 yards,
that's a little bit of a twisting stats. I've heard enough of this stat twisting over the last 12 months to do me for a lifetime. They ran 30 times for 120 yards. That's 4 yards a clip. That's good enough in a playoff. They split carries pretty evenly between Fournette and Jones.
Yeah, that they did.
And Fournette actually caught passes as well.
He did. I'm very pleased that you were looking at the stats. He had a 100-yard game, but not
there were periods of the game where Fournette was the linchpin of some drives, particularly I think early in the third quarter from recollection.
Absolutely.
And I think there was a post that preluded that drive that someone had written on the game day thread that Fournette had jumped off a cliff and literally then carried Tampa Bay on his back down the field on one drive.
That was you, wasn't it, Fooey? You jinxed him.
You're the jinx, not me.
So Fournette's been probably a pleasant surprise, and they got 100. When's the last time Brady got 120 yards out of his running back?
Oh, be ages, and certainly it would have been as a pure running yards, not a mix. Yeah. That's nearly a 50-50 split.
Yeah. So they called counting Brady's couple of quarterback sneaks. They called 32 running plays.
Yeah. Well, and he only attempted 33 passes. So that was
that's a balance. That's what you would call a balanced offense.
Exactly, 50-50. The other thing for me that was really interesting though wasn't just the fact that Fournette was used as a genuine dual threat, but it was how much early on they tried to target Gronk to very little success. They threw his way 5 times and he only caught one of them. And the same deal with Antonio Brown, 3 attempts and he only caught one of them.
And was it just me that both of those seemed to get most of their looks in the end zone, in the red zone?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can remember at least Gronk looking at least 1,000 years old on at least 2 occasions in the end zone.
And certainly the Saints defense seemed to know, hey, it's red zone. They're likely to go to Brown or Gronk.
Yeah.
Whereas after halftime, when they switched the focus a bit in that third quarter and they thought, how about we try Fournette in the end zone? Bang, it was interesting. I thought it was a very well coached game by Bruce Arians, and I thought it was conversely very poorly coached by Peyton on the offensive side. They didn't get anything apart from the one pass that Fui mentioned that Jamius threw when the game was over. They didn't get anything.
I don't think the game was over at that stage. That was their first touchdown. No, that was early in the game, and I think I commented at the time that Brees had to bring a substitute in to do his passing for him.
Well, I was just about to mention that, and is that part of a poor coaching game? Should they have benched Brees, and would they have won if they did?
The game was over when they brought Jamius in. If they'd left him in all game, he'd have like 27 interceptions. You know that, bringing him in. He's used to 30-30.
Yes, right. It was a much better hedge to keep Brees in to throw 3. The best part worked out for them.
The best part statistically was that because of who Brees is, when you do the mathematical analytical algorithm that they do, each interception was only thrown for 3 yards or less. So that's less bad than when Jamius would have thrown his 4 interceptions for 27 yards or 30 yards. It was a bad joke. We'll leave it alone.
Well, at least it could have been an arm punt. At least you got better. Look at the bright side. A Winston interception as opposed to a Brees one. At least it's 30 yards further down the field.
True that. Better
right, and given the way that I'm on you a little bit. I thought it was a very ordinarily called game by Peyton, Michael Thomas, like, is he win the Amelia Earhart Award for this game? Did he even play? Did he even play?
Well,
yeah, 4 targets, 0 catches.
Yeah.
and I wonder, is there a place for, well, and I don't want to be rude, but how do they work out that they're targeting Michael Thomas, who's a deep threat receiver, when Brees can't throw the ball more than 40 yards past
Michael Thomas had a career year last year, made Brees look better, and probably cost the Saints this year an opportunity to go to the divisional championship, or the conference championship game, because Michael Thomas turned 3-yard dink and dunk passes into 35-yard gains last year, and no defense was going to let him do that this year. So you can catch it, but you're only going 3 yards.
And they basically doubled. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they doubled him all game pretty much. The Bucks, they had 2 on him.
Yeah, and a lot of people talk about, there's a lot of conjecture, and it's a great conversation talking about, do teams need number 1 wide receivers? One thing I do know about, if you are going to have a true number 1 wide receiver, is they win one-on-one contests. Does Michael Thomas win one-on-one contests, or does he just play basketball and box out on 3-yard passes? Yeah, could Brees throw it up, and anyone, like Sanders is an awesome route runner, an extremely reliable route runner. Michael Thomas is a 3-yard slant receiver, probably the best in the game, frankly, when on song, that can take a 3-yard pass and turn it into a 35-yard gain. But do New Orleans have a deep threat win a one-on-one pass?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'll spin it around. Has there ever been a playoff game where 2 inarguably elite wide receivers in Mike Evans and Michael Thomas, absolutely elite number 1 wide receivers for each of their teams, have had a lesser impact? Mike Evans caught 1 pass for whopping 3 yards. Admittedly, that was a touchdown pass, but that's not what you want from your number 1 wide receiver.
And
Michael Thomas, admittedly, he had a drop and he didn't do very much to convert the passes thrown his way, the 4 or 5 that were thrown his way, but it's just no present,
Yeah, you can have games like that. You can have games like that where opposing teams just say, this guy's not going to beat us, right? They're going to go.
So they double,
and whatever. And like I said, I don't think Brady had time for those long developing plays anyway that Evans excels at. So there's that aspect to it. I think the Saints made a massive mistake by not playing Winston when Brees was injured earlier in the year.
Well, yeah, I do believe very strongly. I was being sarcastic before when I said the game was all over when Jameis was in, but it was as if that's the way Peyton was thinking about it. I've had to bring him in so the game's over, so we won't bother.
He had to go deep into a trick play because he was getting nothing from Brees.
And that's what I'm saying. Should they have taken him out?
Yeah, and I really think and Fooey maybe had Winston played those games earlier. Instead of the most useless gadget player in the league had played, then maybe Winston would be a little bit more finely tuned. And
you know what shits me the most about Peyton after the game? The first thing he could do, I'm sorry we couldn't win it, but we didn't have Taysom. Big sacrifice not having Taysom. Have some respect for the blokes that pulled the fucking uniform on and were on the field. Even if that's what you think, even if you genuinely believe that this $20 million gadget man is the reason you didn't win because he wasn't on the roster, he wasn't healthy, and he wasn't on the field. Don't say that when Jameson and Ty Montgomery and Sanders gave their heart on the field. Show some fucking class.
The way White played in this game, I don't think it would have made any difference. I think Devin White was on a mission, and Devin White would have cleaned up anything that Taysom Hill tried to do. He was a madman in this game.
The Bucks defense was awesome. If they can get that level.
I don't think they were awesome. I thought they were flashy, right? Yeah. I genuinely thought if you want to know, look, the Winston touchdown to Smith, have a look at bus play. There was a real cool posting that someone put on the board about have a look at the black dot run, right? The Tampa Bay defense has talent in the backfield, but they're not a gelled unit, and they make mistakes. They are the Achilles heel of that team.
Pose a question for you, Fooey. Does it say more about this game and how it unfolded that Michael Thomas's sole impact on the score sheet was the 1 tackle he committed after a Brees interception? Or was the fact that everyone's favourite hyphenated player, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, didn't manage to suck anybody into getting ejected this week? Which was more impactful?
I think Thomas's tackle was probably a bit more impactful. I think we were lucky to see a diva like himself make a tackle. So that's a pretty big statement.
I reckon there's a bit of a coaching future, maybe even a playing coaching future for him over in Green Bay to encourage some tackling from that defense. Enough said about that game. I will throw back to you, Brash, for one last comment. Both of those teams, if there was a defensive divisional round, like an out-and-out defensive divisional round, for all the press and the hype of the two quarterbacks, it was this game, yeah? Probably the two best defenses in the divisional round?
Two best defenses? Better than the Ravens?
Yep, I think so. And I think the result of the game showed that. Brady was under way more pressure than Josh Allen ever was.
I think the defensive line is very, very good for New Orleans. New Orleans always seem to have, as long as I can remember them, a flashy, better than average defence. But you can't fault them for what happened on the weekend, right? Turning the ball over, short fields. They put Brady under enough pressure. They shut down all of the star-studded wide receivers of Tampa Bay. Brady didn't even maybe just snuck up to 200 yards or thereabouts. It wasn't completed maybe half his passes. It wasn't an outstanding performance. It's not like Brady was being surgical. They did give up 120 yards rushing. But that might be more about how, like Ronald Jones ran like a madman at times in that game. You can't put any fault on the Saints' defence in this game. I don't think you can. You give up 4 turnovers in total, lose by 10, and are unable to make any. I was a little bit different to Philly. I genuinely thought, whether it be referees bailing them out with a critical call, on a couple of those interceptions, I was expecting yellow flags to come out and negating the intercept. I can't put any fault on the New Orleans Saints defence in this game. They gave up, they were giving up short fields on at least a couple of occasions, and the offense for the Saints couldn't put scoreboard pressure on the Bucs to push the ball down the field and take advantage of the good rush they were getting on Brady.
Turnovers just kill you, just absolutely kill you.
It's not so much a turnover, it's where turnovers can sometimes be a misleading stat. It's where and the momentum it causes that is more the issue than a pure turnover. Sometimes a turnover is nothing more than an arm punt, right? You turn it over on the goal line, and sometimes that puts even more pressure on the other team. So anyway.
All right, my theory of the game was that the Buccaneers learned from the last 5 weeks and worked out that to succeed in this league, you need to have hyphenated players, and they have 3 on their defense in Murphy Bunting, Raheem Nunez-Roches, and Jason Pierre-Paul with his 3 fingers and a firework injury. So we shall see how the hyphenateds go. Before long, it'll be Tom Brady.
Just don't let him anywhere near that. If they do end up hosting a Super Bowl, and they're and they get one of the first time home team in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Just don't let him near that pirate ship when the cannons go off.
Well, you know how my theory is going to play out midweek as part of the new inaugurated movement in America. The Patriot Party will be launched by the former president, and Tom Brady will change his surname to Brady. What's his wife's surname? Buchanan? I can never say it. Anyway, to Giselle's surname. So that way they'll have 6 hyphenated names on their team, and they'll be a shoe-in for the Super Bowl. Enough said about that game.
Be Baja Biamila.
The Buccaneers Saints game, 2 old blokes and Jameis Winston. There was a little bit of chatter about perhaps Jameis Winston should have stayed in. My own view was as soon as Peyton put him in, Peyton was putting the white flag up and saying the game was finished. What's your view?
I thought that was the most enjoyable game I've seen in a long, long time. It had everything: special teams, trick plays, GOAT quarterbacks, really, really, really good defensive plays, and also massive momentum swings. It was just, I just found it really, really enjoyable, and I just can't bring myself not to like Brady. I think he's fantastic. But one thing actually thinking about those games was, I think we've seen, and I think I mentioned it before the playoffs started, we've seen I suspected that we'd see a transition away from winning playoff games. Buffalo's done it with one of the worst rushing offenses I've seen outside of Josh Allen in a long, long time. It's been interesting, no Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Kansas City. They've still done it easy. Leonard Fournette was all right, but he dropped a few passes, didn't look like a world beater. Kamara was obviously pretty good, but it's just been interesting to watch.
So, Brash, did you want to take up the idea that Leonard Fournette wasn't a world beater?
I didn't say it was a world beater. I said it was effective. I thought it was very good.
Oh, he was.
There were a couple of drives there that Tampa Bay rode him at critical points, in that third quarter. He didn't do anything wrong. He absolutely dropped passes, but shit, everybody was in that game.
He kept the drives alive rather than being the bloke who busted them wide open.
Yeah, he didn't run, didn't put a 65 like Jones did to open the third quarter, ran 65 yards on a 75-yard touchdown drive. It's pretty easy life for Rodgers when that happened. But I thought he was effective and did enough, as opposed to like what Blackie alluded to before. The Rams couldn't sustain drives when it mattered in their game. Yeah, not so much for the running, but more for the fact that Cooper Kupp is the third down conversion machine.
All right.
Okay.
All right. I didn't really want to talk about this one, really. But there's so much to talk about. Brash, why didn't John Worsfold get to play in this one? I was so looking forward to the pharmacist throwing the ball. But in all seriousness, did it really come down to Jared Goff's broken thumb?
No. This was all Packers' key offensive weapons performing at watching Jones run, watching Brady throw the ball. Rodgers throw the ball. They were on song, on tune, and made the plays when they had to. They were, it wasn't a massively dominating offensive performance, but I think it's fair to say Rodgers is playing as well as he's ever played. And watching Jones and the rest of the three-headed monster, they had a nice little stable of running backs going against LA. And I think their offense did enough and did what they needed to do to limit the Rams offense in this game.
For me, I thought the story of this one was the differential, and everybody was hyping up Aaron Donald. I know he wasn't fully fit, and there's a number of Rams fans that made that point, but Rams didn't get a sack, didn't get an interception. They got a fumble, but it was, not a terribly decisive fumble. And conversely, poor old Jared Goff was taken to the cleaners with the best part of 4 sacks, a number of pass defenses, and he was under pressure all night. I'm not sure. There was talk that Bakhtiari being out was going to hurt the offensive line for Green Bay, but credit where credit's due, that offensive line stood up. I thought the Rams were really poorly coached in this game. They didn't make very many defensive changes in how they attacked the Green Bay structure. They were let down yet again by some really poor punting from Johnny Hecker, and their running game it was really the only thing they seemed interested in. They gave the ball to Cam Akers again and again and again. And fair enough, he got close to 100 yards rushing, but you got to have more to beat the Packers with their tackling excellence that they bring in their defense. It's a pretty good idea to try to put the ball in the backfield. So Fooey, I'll let you talk for 3 seconds.
Oh, there's no question. You're just going to let me talk.
Oh, it's your team's game. You must have something to say about it.
Oh, no, I was actually fairly happy. I think defensively we could have called a better game. We had a lot of, we were getting pressure with the 4-man rush, but not consistent pressure. So I was actually disappointed we didn't blitz a little bit more because we know Goff doesn't really like things he can't see. So, I thought we could have blown them out, but I think the defensive play calling probably kept them in it a bit. But overall, I'm happy. Everything I said. How many weeks ago did I tell you guys about the three-headed monster in Green Bay?
But Davante Adams, 66 yards, and you're happy?
Yeah. Hey, we got to win. I don't care how many yards he gets. We had nearly 500 yards of offense. Nearly 200 on the ground. So if we this offense is is it the best Green Bay offense I've ever seen? I don't want to say yes, but it's really close to.
No.
It's
Really?
It's firing. It's firing on all cylinders.
I think it's your most balanced offense for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I
probably.
can't remember you having a running game as reliable as you've.
That's probably the difference. And there's not really any way, if they're stopping the run, then we're throwing all over the place. If they're stopping the deep ball, we're throwing it short and just moving the chains. There's not really a way where we'll find a way offensively. And as it always has been over the past 10 years, we'll go as far as the defense allows us. So look, I'm not as confident going into next week as I was this game, but I'm happy with the way we played. I'm happy there was no injuries, or no significant injuries, I should say. I'm putting this one in the bank, and looking forward to Monday.
That's it. That's all you got.
What do you want me to say? Do you want me?
Rodgers is the greatest of all time.
He's got 2 more games. Wait for 2 more weeks, right? I've got 7,000 tea towels to iron in 2 Wednesdays' time when he starts going on about that one. Yeah.
I'm glad you think he's going to get there. We'll just wait and see. I don't want to be overly negative. The Rams are a franchise that had so much promise. Certainly, they're not short of spending money. I thought it was an abysmal offensive game plan, and I thought they paid a massive price. I just don't get how you give Cam Akers the ball again and again and again, but you don't target Tyler Higbee, and you don't look to anybody except Robert Woods. And obviously Cooper Kupp, not being around has impacted them, but that's no excuse. They had they threw the ball to Malcolm Brown more than they gave him the ball to run with, and I just think that was an inexcusably unbalanced.
They didn't really target our weaknesses, did they?
God no. Your defensive backfield is your biggest weakness.
Our linebackers are our biggest weakness.
Your linebackers are your biggest weakness, and Akers ran at 5 yards a clip, and sometimes you can overthink it, and the commentary all year about the Packers and their inability to tackle meant they just had to win at the line of scrimmage and get the ball into the backfield of the Packers, which they did. They got 5, but it wasn't enough because they didn't respect Goff without Cooper Kupp there. Simple as that. Played 7 in the box, 8 in the box. Yeah, they got their 5 yards. He ran well. He ran 5 yards a clip. Yeah, 5 yards a clip. And fortunately, the Packers actually, whether they just sort of took speed hump training or what during a week, but actually did tackle, and they limited the damage. And the biggest problem the Rams had is they couldn't sustain drive.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, and then they got behind the 8 ball, right? Because Rodgers was just, like they're doing as he pleased, pretty much. And it's one of the most balanced offenses. It's definitely the most balanced offense left in the playoffs out of the last 4 teams. Probably, they were the most balanced offense of the 8 teams that trotted out on the weekend at the end of the day. But make no mistake about this. The Rams, which had the supposed number 1 defense, which I never really rated. Like I eyeballed it. I watched a lot of Rams games. A lot of guys watch highlights and see the stat lines and all the rest of it. But I watched a lot of Rams games by virtue of them being in the NFC West this year. I never thought they were this smothering number 1 defense. And Aaron Donald, as we've talked about before, makes everybody better on that team. And he wasn't fit. He played about 20 less snaps than he normally does in a game. He didn't hit Rodgers once, and he had 1 quarterback pressure for the game. You're not going to win if your best player, who makes everyone else better, there were a lot of plays. If you watch the tape of this game, and I watched it live, and then I watched the 40-minute abbreviated version of it on Game Pass, how often he is left one-on-one with a guard. That's unheard of.
Well, in this game, they actually ran the ball straight at him at least 10 times.
Because
and he didn't have a tackle. Had 1 assist. Didn't have a tackle.
Yeah. So
that says everything,
So the 2 most important players for the Rams, Aaron Donald and Jared Goff, one's coming off a broken thumb 3 weeks ago, and Aaron Donald was, you don't come back from a rib cartridge tear. Like I seriously thought that when I tore cartilages in my ribs, it was a month before I could even breathe deep. And I'm sure we can all attest to those sorts of injuries with ribs, right?
Was that the cartilage, or was that what you were doing while you were trying to breathe?
That was my heart. That was my heart. So coming back from a week, there's no way. It doesn't matter how many injections.
No.
Like he wasn't fit. He normally plays. He's on the field 90% of the time normally, and he would have been lucky if he was on the field half the time, half the defensive snaps. So that's your
They
best
also
player.
didn't adjust their game plan. Their game plan was the same game plan defensively that they trot out when he's fully fit, and you can't do that. If you know one of your star players is less than 100%, surely you adjust it.
Yeah, but and that just goes to and what the Packers did really well is the same thing the 49ers did to the Rams in their first matchup this year. They geared the offense to what the Rams' major deficiency is, which is their linebackers.
So we had two shitty linebacker teams playing each other, and one of the shitty linebacker groups gets through to the championship game.
One had a 3-headed monster that ran for 200 yards and had their best defensive player hobbled.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, the other thing I will say is...
And this is why you don't pay $1 billion. Sorry, mate, on that. And this is why you don't pay $1 billion to cornerbacks. You pay $1 billion to the guy that puts pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah.
I did love his hissy fit though. That was great.
Who, Donald?
No, Ramsey.
Oh yeah.
And I think open question, which we'll talk about in a future podcast, but open question about which team falls off harder and falls off faster, the Titans or the Rams. But this is not a franchise, the LA Rams, that you could guarantee being back in the playoffs next year in the divisional round. Certainly that you'd think they'd make the playoffs, but potentially just the wild card round. I thought it was revealing after the game that McVay said Goff's the quarterback for now. That's equivalent to Dougie Peterson saying he can't take Carson Wentz out because it affects morale in the team, and 2 weeks later taking Wentzzy boy out. Not a vote of confidence. If you're Goff, that has to fill you with question marks, and I think it's a team that had a real downer end, not just because they lost. Every team that loses in the playoffs obviously has a downer end of the year, but the Rams have been far away from being convincing, and Brash made that point that he's seen a lot of them, and they're not as good as the highlights tapes look.
Donald is a wrecking machine, and Donald can single-handedly destroy 3 or 4 drives by himself. Right? He didn't do that once on the weekend.
No. And given how much Green Bay was running the ball, you would normally expect Donald to disrupt some of that stuff, but it was like they knew he wasn't fit. They could see he wasn't going to be able to make tackles. So not only are we going to run the ball, but we're going to run it a lot more than we normally would, and we're going to run it straight at you, mate.
I would have, because I'm such a brilliant tactician, I would have put some big fat ass brick wall inside that didn't get any pressure, and I would have put Donald at defensive end.
Yeah, exactly. And let him stand up and rush and not get the contact. Remember, he's hitting 300-pound guys that are hitting him in the chest, right? Yeah.
So let him stand up and just be unaccountable almost, just be a madman and do what he can. And even though he might only play half of many snaps, he's going to do something on a handful of them. But he was totally ineffective playing inside with that injury.
And that's exactly what I was talking about when I said really poor coaching. Just really, really poor coaching from the Rams. Poor setup, poor game plan.
Oh yeah, look, I think it's pretty telling that they didn't commit to Goff, but the emergence of Cam Akers, I think, is probably going to shift what that team's all about, to be honest. They've just squarely rested. When the game was on the line, they fed him the ball in both their playoff games. I think that's pretty telling. Goff's just going to be, a game manager that's going to be paid 120 mil or whatever it is. Can they afford to get rid of him? I doubt it. They don't have any draft picks. They do have some holes. Their defense looked absolutely anemic when Donald wasn't on the field. So, he's probably just trying to light a fire.
Bloody Brasher, haven't you?
Oh, we're on the same wavelength.
Right.
Kindred spirits. Did the Rams fail to exploit the weaknesses of that stellar tackling machine defense that the Packers trot out every week?
I think the Packers do a few things well. I think they probably didn't go to the run early enough. Not having Cooper Kupp was really, really hard for them because he's usually open, especially on third down. He was essentially replaced by Van Jefferson, who's a rookie. And Goff just looked like he was struggling, to be honest. They also,
so what you're saying is they really needed John Worsfold to come in and be quarterback, yeah?
That's exactly right. But I also think, Jair Alexander is an all-pro caliber player. Not having Cooper Kupp there, it makes life a lot easier for Green Bay because all of a sudden you can cover everyone.
Easy. Let's not build Fui's ego up any more than it's already been built up, all right?
Oh, I mean, it'll be a different kettle of fish this weekend.
Apparently, we're not allowed to do a live stream of the Super Bowl, a live stream podcast if Green Bay make it because one of our panel members can't contain himself. All right, we might wrap that game up with this slightly positive note. Fui, don't get your hopes up. That was the ultimate sugar-coated, honey-dipped marshmallow end to a run of marshmallow games. They didn't attack your weakness. They didn't play to their strength. They didn't make any kind of real adjustment. They just let you be what you are, which when you're not troubled is a pretty effective offensive team. Buckle up for next week, and I hope your offensive line is in good shape next week is all I can say. Brash, any best wishes or good wishes or thoughts or ideas for the great nugget eater?
No.
As he moves forward?
Doesn't need him from me.
Very magnanimous. Which leaves us with the last game. Everybody's kind of sentimental. You know, it's funny how little attention was paid to the playoff drought that the Bills were breaking and how much attention was paid to the playoff drought the Browns were breaking. And we had the greatness that is Baker Mayfield come up against Patty Boy Mahomes. But in the ultimate 2020, the ultimate symbol of the year that we've had wasn't Patty Mahomes that gets the Chiefs home. It's Chad Henne. Were you surprised to see Chad Henne not only take the field but bring the ball home despite throwing an interception there, Brett?
Was I surprised? No. What I was surprised about, and it was pretty ugly actually. It didn't. Well, it was probably 10 seconds of the game. And I'm pretty sure Andy Reid wanted back. Yeah. First of all, 3rd and short, and calling a option running quarterback running play for starters when you only needed a yard. Secondly, how innocuous the hit looked. It didn't. Like, I'm still trying to work out where the heavy contact came to the head. It didn't come from the Cleveland Browns.
Beautiful.
So what I was saying was, it was a turf field. So, okay. If he was going to get hurt, I would have thought any other body part, not his head, right? And then when he tried to get up and he had the spaghetti legs, I thought, shit, he's really been hurt here. And then he went off and he looked dazed. He didn't look happy. And then, they're going into the concussion protocol and out comes Chad Henne. And I was surprised of the seemingly not much in it hit that took him out. I'm not surprised Chad Henne came in because he had to come in. But I guess what was really fortunate was Chad Henne starting week 17. Remember, he would not have thrown a pass in anger this year because he didn't have preseason. So, but I still reckon it was Patrick Mahomes in Chad Henne's number anyway.
Fui, what about that run from the Henster? Was it like a headless chook?
It was like that run from Heinke last week. Just kind of. I guess at least Henne has been in the league long enough to kind of know what he's doing, but it didn't look like it. But look, it was a good gutsy run, and he did what he had to do for his team. And look, I like the run. I've never actually really disliked Chad Henne.
That's important because there's this scale of the Fui likability index, which
I just knew he had it in him. That's why.
It's the Fui likability index is second only to the Wonderlic test in predicting quarterback excellence. We shall make notes.
It was a gutsy run, and he should be commended for it. And yeah, he had an interception, but he made the plays when they needed to be made. So you can't really ask for any more from a backup quarterback, especially in a big playoff game.
All right. I didn't really want to ask you this, Brash, but particularly given you're having some disrupted internet there, I'll take a chance. You might not hear every word in my question. Old mate American Crow, frequent guest of the podcast, likes to, I think favour one side of the ball. Might be punting, might be kicking. I can't quite remember what it is that he likes to see. Do you think that they ran the ball enough?
Yeah, I did.
If you'd turned around and said young boy Baker would throw for 200 yards and they'd rush for 100, most people probably would have said the Browns are in with a chance. Was it a failure of the Browns' offensive game plan?
No, that's right. Now you remind me, and it is a segue. I'm not ignoring your question. It actually does remind me exactly what I was saying before I was getting censured by Google. often when you read American Crow threads, you're not really 100% sure what he's really feeling about the way his team's performing, particularly play calling. Clearly, my analysis has shown that American Crow has a view that all the Browns' woes start from the sideline back to the front office, not the other way around. Yeah, not what goes on the field itself, but everything leading up to that. For one of the few occasions this year, following American Crow's narratives and post-game analysis that happens in the middle of the game, I had to disagree. I respectfully disagree with American Crow. I thought the Browns were fine the way they went about things. I think the intent was to keep it close. They didn't want to get into a shooting match with the Chiefs. They tried to unsettle them a little bit and use Mayfield a little bit more than probably just running it. And I think the Browns actually might have got a bit out of watching the Super Bowl last year. I thought they were pretty strong in the second half, and let's be fair. Let's call it for what it is. You know, we can talk about they should have run Chubb more earlier on, but I think it's fair to say the pivotal moment of this game, ironically on the back of a Mayfield engineered passing drive, was the no-call helmet hit on the goal line. 7 points.
And everybody's favourite rule, the fumble the ball out of bounds.
I have no issue with that. I disagree with the commentary about it's a harsh penalty, it's a 20-yard penalty. No, you drop the ball. Bad luck. Because they say it's the harshest penalty in the game. Really? I would have thought an intercept on the other team's goal line that you take back 100 yards would be a far greater penalty. They should have scored. I'm not convinced the helmet-to-helmet caused the fumble, though.
No.
I think Higgins would probably, competitive nature, score. A smarter player would have made sure he secured the ball all the way through, because they would have got the ball first and goal on the 1 yard line with Nick Chubb in the backfield.
And the Browns coaching staff said exactly that after the game. They said, we don't coach our wide receivers or our running backs to extend the ball like that. And I think that was as much of an insight as anything else. I'm not convinced the helmet to helmet, because the rules are always a little different in playoffs. I'm not convinced, unless it was the Saints or Steelers or somebody else. I wasn't expecting that to be called. And it's a very Browns thing to give them an opportunity like that to blame that non-call for what, the way the game played out. I just thought they were absolutely dominated by the wide receivers and tight ends of the Chiefs, and that's where the real elite talent, even without Edwards-Helaire and some of the other star players, because the Chiefs still didn't have the fully fit, full set of people out there. They still had more talent than the Browns, and that's where it played out on offense. I thought, like you, Bresh, I thought for once, American Crow should have been happy with the balance in the game. And, they used Nick Chubb really well, I thought. They used Kareem Hunt really well. And Rashard Higgins popped up and, provided a good contribution for him. But they just weren't as talented. Let's face it, the Browns, and they, I don't want to be rude to them, but they're a step below the Chiefs, Fu, were you disappointed by the showing by the Browns defense? Myles Garrett maybe wasn't quite as dominant. Sheldon Richardson's certainly not turning out to be quite as much of a playmaker as they might have hoped him to be.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the Chiefs playing how they are, I mean, they're still capable of massive scores, and to only allow, the Chiefs to score 22 points is a pretty good effort. So I don't think they should be disappointed. I think as an organisation, they should be happy. As a team, they should be happy. They're probably finishing up better than what they would have hoped for at the start of the year. I think during the game that the defense has performed fairly well, just not well enough at the end of the game. I don't think so.
No, look, I mean, I don't know. It's been a while since the Kansas City defense impressed me, and they didn't in this game. But, Tyrann Mathieu, Brashad Breeland, Frank Clark, Anthony Hitchens to a lesser extent, you're not talking about a fresh young defense, but when they had to, when the backs were to the wall, they did what they had to do. They got the result. And conversely, I thought as soon as Myles Garrett wasn't really able to impact the game, they had a little bit from Ronnie Harrison, little tiny bit from Sheldon Richardson, but nowhere near what they paid him to deliver. And then you're left with the great Andrew Sendejo, you know? Like, it was the gulf in talent, and it would have been a real upset. Cleveland would have had to have played absolutely out of their skin. I mean, seriously, Brash, how can you chart a course whereby the Cleveland Browns of this year beat Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and Patrick Mahomes?
Well, they were the winners of the offset. Yeah, they're not a roster without talent.
No, and they well deserved to get this far. They deserved the divisional round, but they didn't just fall over the line. Albeit they did pay Fat Ben in the wild card round. They deserved to get to the divisional round, but it's a big step from divisional round to championship game, isn't it?
Yes, but I don't think I've said it all year. A lot of people saying, the Chiefs are better than last year. I don't think so. I don't think they're even near as good as they were last year.
Completely agree.
I don't think Mahomes is anywhere near the superstar. Like there was something on the thread that was hypothesizing today about 10 draft picks for him. Not in a million years. 10 draft picks for someone. Not even 5 draft picks for Mahomes. I don't think he's playing anywhere near to the level he was last year. Maybe he's a little bit comfortable. He's gotten, they talk about racing drivers losing 2 seconds a lap when they go and get married. Maybe his life's got a little bit too comfortable for him as well. I'm serious. It's just subliminal motivations, right? He's not, maybe, not everyone is Tiger Woods, right? When it comes to...
Hang on, you just said when they get married and then you're comparing him to Tiger Woods?
No, as far as that, absolutely driven focus to...
Oh, Tiger Woods was pretty driven. Right? Tiger Woods was pretty driven, but it wasn't about on the golf course.
Well, I think it was pretty well driven with everything he did. I think he just had a competitive streak that regardless of what I do, I'm going to be the best at it, right? Right.
Best being literally defined. Anyway, Let's get back off the golf course and back on the gridiron field. I guess my question is, and not to avoid any misinterpretation by the lovely GG and other individuals on the board, I'm not saying for one second that the Chiefs are anywhere near as good as they were last year or that they were dominant, but they were still, in my view anyway, a significant class above the Browns in terms of talent, and it would have been a real mammoth upset if the talent that the Browns had out there on the field had beaten them. We'll talk about that more next week, young man. There was a little bit of conjecture about what old mate American Crow's views were and whether he was entirely correct this time around that the Stefanski-less Browns didn't get a good balance going on. And Brasher, you can correct me if I get this kind of rewording wrong, if I, misquote you, like Donald Trump misquotes certain things. But basically, Brasher said Stefanski's a hero and got everything perfect, and American Crow doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree, Blackie?
Definitely.
Step in and be my anger translator if you need to be.
That's definitely not what was said either, Blackie, by the way. Not even close.
Oh, yeah. I think they were just playing too conservative. I've got to be honest, I watched this game, but I'm drawing a bit of a blank on it. They just got the win. The thing is, as soon as you've had the ball once or whatever it was, and you had a 3 and out, and then Mahomes has put 2 TDs on the board, it really, really does suck the wind out of you. Chubb looked really, really good. Obviously, Kareem Hunt looked all right. Jarvis Landry, I think, I'd say for them to be throwing as much as they did and in the positions that they did with that receiving core is probably a little bit ill-advised.
I think BPG, if I can summarise what I know was causing American Crow a lot of angst, was at the start of the game, the Browns chose to defer possession to the second half, and there was a bit of to and fro about timing and why would you expose your weakest unit.
Just a little bit. It took 37 posts.
Yeah, so early, and this argument to say that if it's your weakest unit, it ain't going to get stronger, and you're not going to hold the Kansas City Chiefs to a 29.5 minute drive, or you're going to hold the ball for 29.5 minutes in each half to not expose you to defense. So, and I don't think Kansas City, from recollection, have a stellar opening possession touchdown conversion ratio anyway. So, yeah, that's where I really didn't agree with him. He carried on about it, about why did they choose to defer. But the reality of it is, had they scored instead of having that concussion event or non-call helmet to helmet, they probably would have had the ball last in the first half, and then for the first and starting off the second half. So,
I will say where I didn't think Stefanski did particularly well was clock management. Even extending to, hey, we're going to deny the Chiefs the ball, but then you put yourself in a pretty awkward position when you're trying to get points back on the board and you don't have any time left.
Yeah.
Not to back American Crow, but I thought they were horrible. I don't understand. If you take out Baker Mayfield's 3 rushes, they only ran the ball less than 20 times. I don't get that against the Chiefs. When an OBJ-less Browns really don't have deep threats. You know, Jarvis Landry did nothing all day. Anyway.
I didn't score a touchdown.
It was pretty good too.
Yeah.
20 yards total. Thank you. I'll keep him to 20 every week.
I'll happily have him score a touchdown every week.
Yeah, but then somebody else has to score one as well.
Yeah, I think we keep missing the point of that non-call of the helmet-to-helmet
the Higgins,
on the goal line.
Yeah,
that was just, that was, a bit of Higgins' fault. I think he, like I said, he would have fumbled it anyway. I'm not convinced of the head knock, but it was a clear and blatant helmet-to-helmet and should have been called. And there's no reason with the number of officials, it's not like it was in a scrimmage and there's all defensive and offensive line and obscuring lines of sight. You couldn't possibly have missed that helmet-to-helmet.
And you will be delighted to know that one of the officials from that game, Sarah, is now into the Super Bowl quarterback special. So obviously not everybody was disqualified from that game. Certainly not Sarah. Blackie, anything else you wanted to share from the divisional round? We did talk just before you joined us about the fact that in the divisional game, not one team threw more than 38 pass attempts, which is a remarkable reduction for this season, where teams have regularly been throwing 50 or 55 pass attempts. Is that just teams being shit scared of being criticised for a lack of balance by the great American Crow?
Yeah, that's interesting. Didn't feel like it at the time. Felt like all the big plays were off people's arms outside of Aaron Jones.
Certainly the interceptions turned the game in the Saints game, didn't they?
Yeah, there were some weird interceptions too. I tell you what really, really I think hurt was, what did they have? They had a punt return for 50 yards and then the next punt return went for a touchdown that was called back on a penalty, and then was it Deontay Spencer got injured? I think that hurt them a little bit. They looked all over him in special teams.
So what you're saying is it's all about punters. God, I love having you on, Blackie. Probably to wrap up the divisional games, we've got the magnificence, if that's what you want to call it, of Browns Chiefs. Have we talked about that one? I don't think we have talked about that one. Chad Henne, and I'll put the question to you that I put to the rest of the panel a second ago. Who's the best backup quarterback that's left of the teams going on to the championship game?
I think in answer to Brash's question, running quarterbacks clutch. I think that 18-yard pickup from Henne late in the game was pretty clutch. Not that I'd consider him to be a scrambling QB.
He's a mobile quarterback, not a dual threat quarterback.
I'll give you a hint, Blackie. The best backup quarterback left is probably in someone's avatar you can see right now.
No way.
Do I need to turn my video on again for Blackie?
It's a choice between Blaine Gabbert and Chad Henne, really.
Henne all day.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Blackie. That's what I said. Or this guy.
On that happy note, I have only one more question from this game, and it was the perfect. I don't wish to repeat myself too much, but both Brash and Blackie are hearing me loud and clear. It was the ultimate sounding board, mirror image representation of this year that we've had to have the round closed out by the great, the wonderful, the magnificent Chad Henne playing in place of all the exciting talent out there. It just summed up the year. Only completed 6 passes, only ran twice, but got the game over the line for the Chiefs. And doesn't it say that you got to have a contingency and you got to have a backup plan? So, after that long-winded intro, Fui, of the championship game, who has the best backup quarterback?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to. Okay, there we go. That's better. Best backup. Ooh.
Can you even name the backup to Baker Mayfield? No.
No. What are you saying of the remaining 4 of the?
Yeah, I was just checking to make sure you heard my question. That's all.
Yeah.
But seriously, of the divisional teams,
Come on, man.
who had the best backup?
I would say it would probably have to be Henny, to be honest. Henny or Winston. Maybe Winston, just because he actually threw a touchdown pass.
Oh, that's an unfair question. Winston was better than the starter.
I was going to say, didn't we just spend 20 minutes talking about this? And shouldn't that read Winston, not Watson? Don't you really want to trade for Jameis after
No,
the
he's even going to go and email Steve Bono to see if he can wear his number.
All right, we'll talk about that. Brasher is sharing us with yet another one of his fantasies. Don't break that light, Brash.
You're not wrong.
So we're talking about it, but no one can see it. Oh, it's
Sad, isn't it? Do you want me to post it?
Yes.
Do you want me to post it? I'll send you the photo, and you can put it into the podcast.
Just the jersey, not all the other things. Serious question though, gentlemen. Of the 4 remaining teams, who has the best backup quarterback? Because we're living in the end of the 2020 season, and if there's one thing we've learned, you got to have a backup. Phooey, Rodgers goes down. Can you win it?
No.
Well, that's a mean endorsement of faith in Mr. Boyle.
No, look, Tim Boyle he's a body
footballer.
He was a Hawthorn footballer, yes. But there's only one team I'd be comfortable with the backup situation, and that's Kansas City. And as it happens, they are probably the team that needs the backup right now. So
Phooey's flat newsflash is Chad Henne can win a championship game in the NFC.
no, I wouldn't go that far.
Brash, do you agree? Can Chad Henne win an AFC championship game?
Absolutely he can, because as stupid as it sounds, the delta between the starter and sorry, that's not the right way to put it. The ability to put a serviceable performance for their team on the park as a difference between starter and backup is probably it's still a massive impact, but would be smallest. It would have the smallest effect in Kansas City. If that makes sense. Like the gulf in talent, obviously between Mahomes and anyone else, literally is massive. But as far as being a functional team with their backup, like everything, like the way.
Just to be really clear, just to be as clear as a sunny day, you're saying that Matt Barkley's not as good a backup as the greats that is the Chadster.
I don't even know which team Matt. I didn't even realize Matt Barkley was still in the league, and who's he backing up? I don't.
Josh Allen
in Buffalo, yeah.
Well, ask yourself this, BPG: delta in performance for Kansas City between Mahomes and Henne, and between Allen and Barkley.
Let's just say
which team loses more?
I'd have Jake Fromm as my backup if I was the Bills, not Barkley. But remember, I have the joy of having Matt Barkley as a backup quarterback on the Eagles for 3 years, so I know a bit about the bloke. But yeah, it's scary because the sad thing, you get to the tail end of the season. The sad thing is an injury to any one of these teams to their quarterback. I mean, the Buccaneers. Who backs up Brady?
I don't even know who his backup is, to be honest. It's not Blaine Gabbert, is it?
Yes. Actually, that wouldn't be too bad. Blaine Gabbert.
Time to rebadge that jersey, Brasher.
Blaine Gabbert is a future Hall of Fame. I've made that very clear. I'll be running his campaign.
So arguably, I am actually going to put Blaney Boy down. I'm very disappointed that you didn't know that, Brash. Anyway, given he was your avatar up until a couple of weeks ago.
He's still my avatar.
I'll leave it at that. I made my point.
But I just don't think he could win all the Super Bowls he wants in Tampa Bay. Will never surpass his performance as the 49ers. That's where he made his name.
Bottom line, all 4 teams are in trouble if their quarterback goes down.
Yeah, I know. But pretty revolutionary statement, that.
That's what we should do. COVID round. Call this COVID round. All starting quarterbacks must sit.
I did actually have a hypothetical discussion with a friend at the baseball. You lose your number 1 wide receiver, you lose your number 1 running back, and you lose your starting quarterback. Travis Kelce probably has a massive game for the Chiefs, playing quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. It's just scary because so many of the teams at this sharp end of the season are very dependent on, not always on the quarterback, but on 1 or 2 particular players.
Shit, I'm going to go lie down. So what you're telling me is the last 4 teams, the last 4 teams in the season left standing need big performances from their starting quarterback. Oh shit, I'm going to go lie down.
I know.
cricket league.
When did the NFL transform into such a quarterback-centric league?
All right, we'll segue to the
Silly
preview episode.
hypotheses, mate.
We'll segue to the preview episode with my last silly question on the review of the divisional game. Of the 4 remaining coaches, which coach would be most able to adapt to losing his starting quarterback? Andy Reid, Sean McDermott, Bruce Arians, or that guy that loves love in Packerland? Fu?
I would actually say it'd be LaFleur, to be honest. We've got a 3-headed running back team if Rodgers goes
right.
down. So
We're running.
yeah, we
he's
will
drafted Love.
run it down everyone's throat.
So
That's right.
See, I'm most disappointed that you didn't say, well, it's obvious that when Rodgers gets hurt, Love is going to come in off the bench.
But it's not yet. It'll be Boyle.
I think we saw all the proof we needed, mate, on the weekend on which coach would adjust, and that's Andy Reid. 3rd and 1, need a first down to ice the game, and he gets Handy to throw it. If that's not happily being comfortable with your backup, then I don't know what is.
Damn straight. He's the same guy I'd pick. Bruce Arians is straitjacketed. LaFleur is one-dimensional. McDermott is just as one-dimensional on Josh Allen. I fear for McDermott's sanity if Josh Allen gets hurt. And Andy Reid's the old-school, multifaceted dude. Anyway, on that happy note, we'll do the preview of the championship